All right, let's get right into it. What you're about to see is a breakdown of recent reporting and analysis covering some really serious allegations against the Vice President of the Philippines, Sara Duterte. We're going to unpack the key arguments presented in the source materials, starting with a quote that's right at the center of this whole controversy. No joke. No joke. According to the sources, these are the exact words Vice President Duterte used right after she allegedly admitted to hiring an assassin to kill the president if she dies. I mean, that's a stark statement, right? And it forms the basis for one of the most severe accusations against her. It really sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. So the first major theme that these source materials really build up is what they call asal bata, or, childish politics. The argument they make is that this isn't just about her personality. It's about a pattern of unprofessional conduct that has some pretty serious consequences for how the country is run. Okay, so what exactly do they mean by asal bata politics? Well, the way the sources define it, it's a style of governing where petty spite is more important than policy, where personal grudges take priority over public service, and where bullying pretty much replaces any kind of healthy debate. This whole concept is really presented as a foundational piece of the case against her. And for evidence, the sources point directly to this quote. They allege that when she was asked about a way to lower the price of rice, the vice president actually admitted she knew a solution but refused to share it. Why? She apparently said, simply, "I just don't want to help PBBM." In the articles, this is held up as the perfect example of putting a personal grudge ahead of the entire nation's interest. And this is where the reporting connects that alleged behavior directly to her constitutional duties. They argue this goes way beyond just being immature. They actually frame it as a betrayal of public trust. And that phrase is important because they point out it's a specific, impeachable offense. That link between personal conduct and legal accountability is absolutely central to their case. Okay, so from here, the allegations laid out in the reporting really escalate. We shift from critiques of political style to outright criminal accusations. And that brings us to the second, and you could argue the most serious part of the case, detailed in these materials. So the core allegation, as it's stated in these texts, is that the vice president admitted, on a recorded call no less, to having a retaliatory murder plan. The alleged targets? The president, the first lady, and the Speaker of the House. One article even calls it a kill switch plot, something to be triggered if she were to die. The sources then break down why they believe this is actually a crime. They argue her own words contain all the key elements of what's called criminal solicitation. First, she named specific targets. Second, she admitted to giving a direct instruction, a kill order. And third, she confirmed that the person she tasked had agreed, that they said yes. Now, the analysis in these articles suggests this wasn't some accidental slip of the tongue. Instead, they argue it reveals a very specific psychological profile that they call a warlord mindset. And this mindset, they claim, is shaped by an environment where violence isn't seen as a last resort, but is just another reasonable strategic tool in the toolbox. Building on that idea of a particular mindset, the third theme the articles get into is an alleged pattern of using and benefiting from disinformation. It's a pattern that actually led one source to call her the fake news queen. This timeline, which is drawn straight from the reporting, lays out this alleged pattern over several years. They point back to 2020 to a debunked viral post about pandemic aid. Then in 2022, there were accusations of digitally altered quote cards making the rounds during the election. By 2023, you see new tech getting involved with an AI-generated video showing her speaking fluent Mandarin. And then just this year, in 2024, footage from a festival in Spain was reportedly repackaged online as a pro-Sara rally. A really key part of this allegation is the claim that her camp never once tried to correct any of these falsehoods. This brings us to the fourth big point, the alleged evasion of accountability. The source materials draw this really sharp contrast between what the vice president says in public and the specific legal moves her team is making behind the scenes in response to the impeachment complaint. And the sources really hone in on this contradiction. Publicly, she projects this defiant image, using words like bloodbath when talking about the complaint. But at the same time, according to the reporting, her legal team is filing motions to get the whole impeachment trial dismissed on a technicality before it can even start. So, what is she allegedly trying to avoid explaining? Well, this number is a huge part of one of the articles of impeachment. It represents 125 million pesos in confidential funds that were reportedly spent in just 11 days. The sources claim that a full impeachment trial would force her to publicly account for where every single peso went.
And those confidential funds are just one part of the formal complaint. As cited in the source materials, the articles of impeachment cover a whole range of allegations. You've got the grave threats charge, which we already talked about. There's the alleged misuse of over 612 million pesos in total confidential funds. But it goes even further into claims of unexplained wealth, incomplete asset declarations, alleged links to high crimes and extrajudicial killings from her time in Davao, and even accusations of sedition and plotting to destabilize the government.
And what's her public reaction to all these formal charges? Well, according to the texts, she's dismissed the entire thing as nothing more than a scrap of paper. This quote is used in the articles to show what they describe as a total disdain for the very constitutional processes she swore an oath to uphold. Okay, let's pull back and look at the bigger picture here. This last section of our explainer is all about synthesizing the arguments from across the sources about why this case matters, why it's bigger than just one politician. So here's the crucial point. The articles frame this whole situation as a massive test for the country's democratic institutions. The question they're posing is basically, is the system of checks and balances strong enough to hold even the second highest official in the land accountable for her alleged actions? This quote from one of the sources really just sums up the core argument perfectly. The authors are saying that this debate is fundamentally about our standards for leadership, about fitness for office. It's about drawing a line between what they call strong leadership and something they describe as psychological instability masquerading as strength. And we end with this really provocative question pulled directly from the source material. It reframes the whole issue, moving it beyond a simple question of guilt or innocence. It asks all of us to consider the ultimate stakes, not just for one official's career, but for the very survival of the Republic's democratic norms.